Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we love talking about topics related to helping lift our nonprofits. And that's why we're excited to have with us Dottie Jones, Executive Director and Chairman of CoactionNet's Board of Directors, and Crystal Oliver, Chief Systems Administrator for CoactionNet. How are you two doing?
Oh, we're doing great today, Jeremy. Thanks for having us on your show.
Doing good. Thank you.
Well, you all are doing tremendous good and really serving as a valuable resource with our nonprofits and for our nonprofits. We'll talk about that, but there's so much to unpack. Let's start a little bit, though, with your personal backgrounds, and that'll lead us into what led you to launch the company. Dottie, give us some of your background.
Well, as you can see from the gray hair, it's long. So, I have a marketing degree, business degree, and but I spent most of my career with the nonprofit sector and in government relations. So I went from working for a couple of small nonprofits to working for United Way of the Mid-South as their VP of marketing. And I went from there to the city of Memphis, doing government relations and grants for the city. Worked for 3 different mayors under the city administration, and then moved over to the county. Then did much the same thing under the county with the addition of running the Division of Community Services.
Well, and I think you're already seeing the through line in terms of working with nonprofits and entities, understanding the challenges, understanding the opportunities with a, servant's heart in terms of being able to help lift the community. So let's switch it over. Crystal, give us some of your background.
Yeah, mine is actually very similar to Dottie's. I started out working for a government agency, Department of Human Services. I started out in Nashville and moved. Memphis is home for me, moved home to Memphis and started working as the data coordinator at the local Memphis office. And so there is where I kind of learned a little bit more about databases and understanding data. And like Dottie, I worked with several different nonprofits since then. Worked for CECO and some other nonprofits, and have been working just in data and data analysis and compliance for different organizations.
So already, the picture is painted is a purpose of lifting the community, working with nonprofits, a focus on data, and a focus on efficiencies and improvement. And how do we connect and combine all these powerful opportunities? And that leads us to CoactionNet. So go ahead and talk about how you two met, and then obviously forming CoactionNet.
Well, and CoactionNet is really an outgrowth of all the work that I've done with nonprofits and government agencies, because what you realize when you're writing grants and you're working with these agencies is that they need to prove that what they do works. The only way you can prove that what you do works is if you have inputs and outputs. And, you have to, you can tell stories all day long about clients, and that's great, and their success stories, and those subjective results are great. But when it comes down to getting money for your organization and applying to a foundation or a government entity, what you have to do is you have to show that the work you do has value and adds to the community. So the only way you can do that is collect data. It's hard. Nobody likes to do it. And when I created CoactionNet, I did it with a couple of things in mind. One was making it easier for agencies to input data and output the results of that data. Number 2 was just to be able for organizations to work together So, we have the ability in our system for agencies to work together with one client and share information so that that client gets an array of services. And so those are the things that sort of built the backbone of CoactionNet over the last 10 years.
How easy, how difficult, when you talk about an idea and then as an entrepreneur, okay, bringing this to life. So you see the gap, you see the opportunity, but how did you go about building the platform, building it? So give us a little bit of that behind the scenes of, creating it.
Well, I'm not a programmer, so the first thing to do is hire good programmers. But programmers can only do what you ask them to implement. And I think the value that Crystal and I bring to this arena is that we understand how nonprofits work, and how to help them create a data system that meets their needs. So you have to understand the field that you're working in. You have to have really good people, and you have to listen to the community. And if they say, the system does this, but I need it to do that, you have to be willing to figure out how to do that instead of this.
Give us an idea when you're talking about CoactionNet with nonprofits, especially, and saying, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's how it can benefit you. Walk us through some of those value propositions.
In my view, people are used to gathering data, especially small organizations. We work a lot with small organizations, and they're used to gathering data on spreadsheets. So you've got a flat file spreadsheet that has all of your clients and their addresses and whatnot, but you can't make that produce the kind of results that you need. So we help those agencies transition from this concept of, okay, I'm going to keep everything in an Excel spreadsheet, to an actual data system where they can connect the data in, in a relational database. So that's how it brings value. And then getting the data back out. So data in is one thing. You can collect it all day long, but if you can't pull it back out into a meaningful report that has a graph, or has percentages, has information, then, and here's a really good example. A lot of people count how many times they do something, but they don't know how many times they do it for one particular client. So we look not only at unduplicated efforts, but unduplicated clients. That's just one way to look at it.
Crystal, what would you add? Because part of this, I would assume too, is on the front end, asking the right questions, getting to know the nonprofit organization and what's going to be impactful for them, partly so you can customize, but two, walk them and train them, just, like we're talking about. Walk us through some of the questions you like to ask on the front end, the things that you're looking for, so that okay, here's how we can guide and direct for the right outcomes.
Yeah, so a lot of times what I'm looking for is, what do you have to report? Okay. And so I always tell people I like to start with the end in mind, and what types of questions are you trying to answer? Okay. And so what we typically do, a lot of times organizations, they have lots of forms and lots of information that they're gathering. And so we sit down with them and determine, okay, how much of this information do you actually need? And how much do you need to how much of it are you actually going to use to be able to show your stakeholders what you're doing, and if what you're doing is effective. And so I always tell people I start with the end in mind, and then we customize and create everything and actually walk through their processes and kind of help them put their processes in a system. I always tell them the system does not solve all your process issues, but it does help you to be able to have transparency within the organization, and also be able to have some accountability as well. well in terms of how you're providing services, and be able to report those outcomes and how you're actually being effective in changing the people's lives that you are serving.
Yeah, and I've got to believe there's a lot of aha moments, just like you're talking about, where just because they've been measuring it before doesn't mean it's actually something they need to really be measuring. And maybe they're missing a lot of things that they really should be. And when you look at, okay, time savings over here, maybe you add a little bit more time to track different things over here, and it's a little bit more on the front end, but then obviously it leads to much better outcomes, much better results, much better information. And so I think there's probably a lot of aha moments. Are there any that come to mind as you're working? You don't have to name the nonprofit, but just those type of aha moments where it's like, okay, let's really sit down and look at the landscape of everything, and let's figure out what you really need to be tracking, what we're really trying to, achieve as the outcomes, and let's kind of revamp this whole process.
We have a couple of organizations that like to work together. And so I can think of a few right now that have more like networks. And so they've been like referring clients to one another for many years, but there's no true way to kind of show what's happening with the clients and how they're actually, the outcomes, and if the referrals are actually working. And so we've helped several different networks of organizations that are working together to serve a client, make referrals, have that transparency in their process, being able to see like how long does it take to actually be able to get a referral through, and kind of getting those days shortened so that people are getting served faster. And so that I noticed that is one of the bigger ones, especially when it comes organizations trying to work together. But there's a lot, most organizations that I work with, like Dottie said, they've been using spreadsheets for so long that they haven't really seen the true outcomes. Like they're actually going through and counting on paper or on a spreadsheet. So even just being able to easily push a button and get that information that you need is a huge a lot of progress for them and a huge benefit for each organization. So, you got anything?
And it's hard. It's really hard for people to get to change their mindset to say, okay, I have to devote a certain portion of my day every day to entering data in this system, or else you get to the end of the week or the end of the month and there's way too much to enter at one time. So it has to become part of the culture. When I started this 10 years ago, I started working with MIFA. And MIFA had a data system they needed to change. It was an old, outdated data system they needed to change to just keep up with people who were applying for emergency services. But they were still based on paper. They were putting the paper in the computer and using that to process data, which was a big step forward. 2020 came along and everybody's office closed. And all the people who were used to walking into MIFA's front door and filling out a form, all of a sudden did like, what do we do? We completely changed their system. They no longer use paper. They enter everything. The client enters everything online into our data system, and MIFA processes that information electronically, including all the uploads of copies of their MLGW bill or their lease or their rent statement or whatever it is that they're applying for. So it's a complete change in the way we think about how we work. And that's kind of what we do, even if COVID hadn't come along, that's what we try to do with a lot of our clients, change the way they think about how they work.
Yeah, and carry that into, I think, the big picture of, why this matters in the community. Because just like you're talking about, you're helping nonprofits to operate more efficiently and effectively. That allows them to increase their impact, share results, show the results in the storyline, which leads to more funding opportunities. And so I think by empowering and equipping and providing what would be a very robust service to help the smaller nonprofits, to me, there's a big ripple effect in the community of this has big tangible benefits for all of us in terms of improving outcomes. Share a little of your thoughts around the big goal for CoactionNet.
My dream, and I still have it. It's not realized yet, but it might be someday. I would really like to see a day when a lot of different agencies actually shared one database, so that I could go in and this is hard for agencies to get their head around, because sort of like my client is my client and I'm the only one that can serve my client. But I may be serving the client with this service and the client is being served by another agency with a similar service. We don't want to duplicate the service. We want to enhance the service. I would like to get to a day when organizations are not afraid to share the data, and clients are not afraid to have their data shared, so that you could go in and look at a picture of someone's life and needs from a social service perspective and say, this client, their needs are being met over here, but not over here. And what is the best organization that could meet their needs over here? And we are not afraid to share information about what we're doing. It's a big leap for where we are. You know, people are concerned about data privacy. So am I. Our system is totally HIPAA compliant. It is totally safe and secure. All the data is encrypted. You know, you have to have a password to get in the system and use it with the right agreements between organizations and permission from the client. This is not impossible to do. It doesn't violate any privacy standards. It's all a matter of getting the correct permissions. And I think in the long run, it could have a huge benefit for our clients and our organizations.
Yeah. And I think these are important conversations to be having. So that's why I love, being able to have you come on the show. Wrap up with where we can go to learn more about CoactionNet. Where can we go to take next steps? So website, phone number, where would you direct us to go?
So you can find us at CoactionNet.org, and CoactionNet spelled with 2 N's, so CoactionNet.org. And we have a form there. If you're interested in working with us, you fill that form out and we'll make contact with you and we'll get started.
Well, Crystal, Dottie, thank you for all you do to power the good, to help nonprofits. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.